The storytelling style used in this narrative is best described as a continuous immersive flow, a form of writing designed to draw the reader deep into the emotional landscape of the story without allowing mental breaks or distractions. This type of narration mimics the feeling of listening to someone speak their truth in one uninterrupted breath of confession, a memory, or a long-awaited emotional release. It keeps the reader locked inside the experience, traveling through it moment by moment with the narrator. One of the defining traits of this style is its fluid sentence structure. Sentences often stretch long, weaving multiple sensory and emotional details together. They do not feel rushed, nor do they feel artificially clipped. Instead, they unfold gradually, mirroring the internal unraveling of the narrator. This allows the reader to experience thoughts as they occur, sometimes tangled, sometimes heavy, sometimes painfully clear. The pacing mimics the cadence of memory rather than the rhythm of typical prose. Another key characteristic is the heavy use of sensory immersion. The narrator describes not only events but also the atmosphere surrounding those events. The smell of cinnamon and pine, the blinking of Christmas lights, the sharp scent of cold air outside the motel, the feeling of silence that is peaceful instead of suffocating. These sensory elements act like emotional anchors, grounding the reader in place and time. They make the story feel less like something you're reading and more like something you're witnessing. The perspective remains deeply internal and reflective. The story is not driven primarily by dialogue or external action, but by the narrator's inner world, their realizations, their emotional shifts, their quiet breaking points. This creates an intimacy that allows readers to feel the narrator's internal transitions, hope turning into duty, duty turning into resentment, resentment turning into clarity. Readers are invited not just to understand the narrator but to inhabit their emotional journey. The structure resists the traditional separation of paragraphs as isolated blocks of thought. Instead, paragraphs transition smoothly into one another, maintaining a seamless emotional continuity. Each paragraph feels like an extension of the previous one, not a new idea but the next logical emotional step. This uninterrupted style builds momentum, pushing the story forward even during quieter moments. It creates a sense of inevitability, as though the narrator has finally gathered the courage to speak everything they've held inside. The tone is simultaneously calm and intense. There is no dramatic screaming, no exaggerated expressions, no melodrama. The power of the style lies in its restraint. When the narrator describes betrayal or manipulation, the tone stays controlled, allowing the reader to feel the weight of the situation without emotional overperformance. The quietness itself becomes a storytelling tool. Silence carries more meaning than shouting ever could. Finally, this style is crafted with audience engagement in mind. The narrator directly addresses the reader, asking where they're listening from, inviting them to imagine what they would have done, or encouraging them to share their own experiences. This breaks the fourth wall just enough to make the story feel personal and communal at once. Through all these elements, the storytelling technique achieves its goal. It doesn't merely tell a story, it places the reader inside the narrator's mind, heart, and history, creating a deep emotional resonance that lingers long after the final line. The emotional architecture of this narrative is intentionally crafted as a slow-building, carefully layered experience designed to lead the reader from comfort into discomfort, from obligation into exhaustion, and finally from pain into empowerment. Rather than relying on sudden shifts, the story uses a gradual emotional evolution that mirrors the lived experience of someone trapped in a dysfunctional family dynamic. This creates a resonant emotional journey that feels authentic, relatable, and deeply human. The story begins in a place of warm stability. The narrator's independent life is painted with softness, quiet mornings, the smell of fresh coffee, peaceful routines, small personal victories. This initial emotional baseline is crucial. It establishes what the protagonist once had, what they valued, and what they sacrificed. It makes the reader feel the loss more sharply later. The warmth is not just comfort, It is a benchmark of what home truly feels like. When the mother calls, the tone shifts into anxiety and urgency. The panic in her voice, the impending loss of the childhood home, and the emotional weight of family history all combine to create a sense of emotional duty. This section relies on guilt, nostalgia, and love twisted subtly into obligation. It's not manipulation, yet not overtly, but it is the beginning of the emotional distortion that will define the rest of the story. The narrator's decision to move back home is driven by love and responsibility, which sets the emotional stakes very high. The next phase is the slow descent into exploitation. This is the most carefully constructed emotional layer. Instead of presenting the exploitation as sudden or dramatic, the narrative portrays it as creeping, incremental, and almost invisible at first. Tiny comments, shifting expectations, growing dependency, all of them disguised as normal family behavior. This slow burn deterioration mimics real emotional burnout. The reader feels frustration, sympathy, and a growing sense of tension, as if watching a trap quietly close. The emotional weight intensifies as small instances of disrespect accumulate. The mother's passive-aggressive remarks, her entitlement, and her complete lack of gratitude create a thick emotional fog. The narrator feels exhaustion, irritation, and a shrinking sense of self. The emotional architecture here is claustrophobic. A house that once held memories now feels tight, heavy, and suffocating. Readers can feel the emotional oxygen running out. The breaking point at the Christmas table serves as the emotional climax. Instead of explosive drama, the moment is marked by chilling calmness. This stillness is more powerful than rage. It conveys not shock, but acceptance, the emotional equivalent of a final door closing. Betrayal is not delivered loudly, it is delivered casually, making the wound deeper. The reader is made to feel the clean snap inside the narrator's heart. The quiet escape represents emotional detachment. It isn't triumphant, yet it's numb, hollow, drained. The absence of tears is symbolic. The emotional reserve has run dry. This emotional emptiness then evolves into clarity, especially when the mother's lies surface. Anger is replaced by resolve. Hurt is replaced by truth. Finally comes empowerment, the emotional resolution of the narrative. The new apartment, the sunlight, the solitude, all symbolizing emotional rebirth. The narrator isn't celebrating revenge, they are celebrating peace. The emotional journey ends not with fireworks, but with quiet strength, which is more impactful because it contrasts the chaos they left behind. This emotional architecture works because it charts a realistic, deeply relatable path from love, obligation, exploitation, pain, truth, freedom. It mirrors the journeys many people take when they finally break cycles of emotional dependence and reclaim their autonomy. The story's psychological hooks are what make it impossible for readers to look away. They aren't loud, sensational, or melodramatic, they're intimate, familiar, and rooted in emotional truth. The narrative taps into universal wounds: parental approval, obligation, guilt, betrayal, and the desire for self-respect. These hooks operate subtly, pulling the audience deeper into the narrator's experience until they are fully invested. Here's how they work. The hidden pain hook. The story begins with a sense of normalcy and routine, only to slowly reveal a deeper emotional struggle. This mirrors experiences people often hide behind calm appearances. Readers recognize this emotional mask and instinctively lean in. The slow reveal creates curiosity. What went wrong? When did things change? Why does the narrator sound so tired? This hook is powerful because it mirrors real life. Most emotional wounds don't start dramatically, they start quietly. People relate to unspoken hurt too. The silent betrayal hook. The Christmas dinner moment is a psychological masterstroke. Instead of a screaming match or dramatic conflict, the betrayal is delivered calmly, almost casually. That stillness makes it more shocking. Emotional betrayal without raised voices is far more cutting. It feels cold, calculated, and dismissive. This hook works because readers feel the injustice viscerally. The brain reacts strongly to unfairness, especially when directed at someone who has sacrificed so much. 3. The hero with no reward hook. The narrator is a classic hero, responsible, generous, self-sacrificing. Their kindness is exploited rather than appreciated. Audiences empathize deeply with characters who do everything right and still get hurt. This creates a protective instinct in readers. They want justice on the narrator's behalf. This psychological dynamic keeps the audience emotionally tethered to the protagonist. 4. The family shame spiral hook. Most people, at some point, have experienced or witnessed family members manipulating narratives, hiding truths, or rewriting events to save face. The story taps into that collective memory. The mother doesn't just betray the narrator, she rewrites the entire story and spreads lies through the family network. This hook triggers a powerful emotional reaction because social shame, especially within families, activates survival instincts. Readers want the truth to come out. They want the narrator to win. 5. The quiet strength hook. The narrator never explodes. They do not scream, argue, or break down. Instead, they respond with calm clarity. This is psychologically compelling because audiences expect emotional breakdowns in stories like this, but the narrator subverts that expectation. This restraint becomes a hook of its own. Readers want to understand why the narrator is so calm, and what that calmness will ultimately lead to. 6. The expose the truth hook. When the narrator finally posts the truth online, it satisfies a deep, universal desire for transparency and justice. Humans are wired to crave resolution when confronted with lies. This pulling everything into the light moment is emotionally cathartic. Readers feel relief not because drama is created, but because dishonesty is dismantled. 7. The rebirth hook. The final hook is emotional transformation. The narrator rebuilding their life, reclaiming peace, and rediscovering independence creates a sense of triumph. This satisfies the audience's psychological need for closure. They see the character not just surviving but evolving. The story uses a sophisticated blend of emotional, structural, and conversational engagement techniques engineered to keep readers hooked for several minutes straight. These techniques mimic the pacing and psychology of modern viral storytelling, especially the formats that perform well on YouTube narration, TikTok storytelling, long-form reels, and personal essay platforms. 1. The immediate shock opening technique. The story begins in medias residential, right in the middle of a pivotal emotional moment. You need to move out. This abrupt, cold line delivered at the Christmas table creates instant tension. Audiences are pulled in because the opening violates expectations. Christmas is supposed to be warm, but the moment is emotionally brutal. This shock draws readers instantly into the conflict. 2. The reverse question hook. Right after the emotional blow, the narrator asks, "Before I tell you the rest, tell me where you're listening from." This conversational technique breaks the wall between storyteller and audience. Viewers feel seen, invited, and included. This increases retention because people engage more deeply when they are asked to participate rather than passively consume. 3. Continuous micro cliffhangers. Every few paragraphs introduce a soft cliffhanger, not dramatic, but subtle enough to pull the reader into the next section. Examples: but weeks turn into months, and that's when the shift happened. Until the wire snapped. The first sign was my end calling. These micro-tension points keep curiosity alive. They mimic the episodic rhythm of binge-worthy storytelling. 4. Sensory immersion. The narrative uses rich sensory details, smells, textures, sounds to deepen immersion. The room smelled like cinnamon and pine. Lights blinking off the tree. Morning coffee and freedom. Sensory writing tricks the brain into believing it is inside the story, which significantly increases emotional retention. 5. Slow burn tension building. Instead of dramatic explosions, tension grows like rising heat. Audiences subconsciously track the protagonist's emotional temperature. A small complaint, a passive-aggressive remark, an expectation, an entitlement, a command. This build-up mirrors real-life family dysfunction, and because it feels authentic, readers remain invested in following the emotional trajectory. 6. The empathy loop. Readers are constantly placed inside the narrator's perspective, never from a distance. We hear their internal reactions, fears, doubts, and rationalizations. This technique creates a powerful empathy loop. Readers feel what the narrator feels. When empathy is high, retention skyrockets. 7. Social mirror moments. These are moments in the story where the audience sees their own life reflected. Guilt-tripping parents being the responsible sibling, doing everything and being appreciated for nothing. These mirrored experiences make the story sticky. Readers keep going because it feels like their story too. 8. Truth reveal satisfaction. When the narrator posts the timeline of events online, readers experience catharsis. Humans crave truth, especially when lies and manipulation are involved. This public truth reveal is a powerful engagement kick. Readers feel rewarded for staying through the emotional build-up. 9. Empowerment payoff. The ending shifts from tension to healing, which satisfies the audience's emotional investment. After witnessing the protagonist's hardship, readers want to see them win. The quiet triumph. New apartment, sunlight. Peace delivers a clean, satisfying payoff. 10. Imitation to respond. The final lines directly encourage audience interaction. Tell me where you're watching from. Share your story. This converts passive readers into active participants, boosting comments, rewatches, retention, and emotional connection. Expanding a heading into 500 words is not simply about adding lines. It is about unfolding the concept behind the heading in a way that feels complete, coherent, and meaningful. A heading is usually a compressed idea, a label, a theme, a direction, and the goal of expansion is to take that condensed thought and transform it into a fully developed narrative, analysis, or explanation. This process requires structure, depth, and clarity. The first step in expanding a heading is identifying the core meaning of the title. Every heading contains an implied question. What does this topic represent? Why is it important? What angle should be explored? Before writing even begins, the heading must be interpreted. For example, if the heading is character dynamics, the writer must consider what character relationships mean, how they influence storytelling, and why they matter. This early interpretation stage creates the foundation for all the writing that follows. Next comes conceptual expansion. This involves breaking the heading into multiple sub-ideas that naturally fit beneath it. A 500-word section cannot survive on a single thought. It must branch into complementary components. Typically, these components include definitions, examples, implications, causes, effects, and applications. For any heading, a writer might consider exploring its context, its internal parts, its real-world relevance, or its emotional or psychological dimensions. This is what turns a one-line title into a layered piece of writing. Once sub-ideas are established, the writer builds logical structure. A well-expanded 500-word section usually follows a simple arc. Introduction, restate or reframe the heading as a deeper idea. Development, discuss the sub-concepts one by one. Illustration, use examples, metaphors, or scenarios to clarify points. Connection, show how the ideas relate to the larger story, theme, or purpose. Conclusion, offer a takeaway, insight, or summation that reinforces the heading. This structure ensures the writing feels organized and intentional, not like filler or repetition. Another key part of expansion is depth and specificity. To reach 500 quality words, the writer must avoid vague statements and focus on meaningful detail. Good expansion explores why something matters, how it functions, and what consequences it has. If the heading concerns emotions, the writer might explore subtle psychological patterns. If it concerns storytelling, the writer could analyze narrative techniques or audience reactions. Depth is what separates a thoughtful 500-word expansion from a long but empty paragraph. Equally important is coherence, the idea that all 500 words must follow one consistent line of thought. Expansion does not mean wandering off topic. Every sentence must serve the heading. The best expansions feel like natural extensions of the title, not tangents. Finally, expanding a heading into 500 words requires a sense of worth and purpose. Whether the tone is analytical, emotional, academic, or narrative, it must remain consistent throughout. The writer's goal is not just to fill space, but to make the heading come alive, to transform it from a label into a vivid, fully realized idea that the reader can understand and connect with. Truth reveal satisfaction is one of the most compelling emotional payoffs in storytelling. It is the moment when a hidden reality, secret, or misunderstanding is finally laid bare, and both the characters and the audience experience clarity. This narrative mechanism works because humans are naturally wired to seek resolution and understanding. Throughout a story, tension often builds around uncertainty, deception, or incomplete information. The anticipation of discovering what is really happening engages the mind, triggers emotional investment, and keeps readers or viewers hooked. When the truth is finally revealed, the satisfaction stems not only from the resolution itself but also from the release of the tension accumulated during the build-up. At its core, truth reveal satisfaction relies on foreshadowing and careful narrative architecture. Writers must see subtle clues that hint at the hidden reality without giving it away too soon. These breadcrumbs allow the audience to feel clever when they start noticing patterns, even if the complete truth remains elusive. The more skillfully a narrative balances concealment and revelation, the greater the eventual emotional impact. The audience experiences a sense of discovery and reward that feels earned rather than handed to them, which intensifies the satisfaction of the reveal. In this way, the truth does more than resolve plot points, it validates the audience's attention and engagement, creating a deep sense of narrative fulfillment. Truth reveal satisfaction also has a strong psychological dimension. Humans are naturally sensitive to fairness, justice, and closure. When a story conceals a truth that affects the character's fates or decisions, the audience develops an emotional investment in seeing the correct order restored. The reveal satisfies an innate desire for cognitive closure, the mental comfort of knowing what really happened. This is why mysteries, plot twists, and confessions are so compelling. The audience craves the intellectual and emotional resolution that comes with understanding the full picture. Without this reveal, tension can feel unresolved, leaving the audience anxious or dissatisfied. In addition, truth reveal satisfaction deepens character development and relational dynamics. Revealing hidden motives, past actions, or secret emotions allows characters to transform in the eyes of the audience. A well-timed reveal can shift the perception of a character from antagonist to misunderstood, or from hero to flawed human. It provides a moment of empathy or moral reckoning that enhances the emotional resonance of the story. This dual effect, satisfying the audience's need for clarity while adding complexity to the characters, makes the truth reveal a pivotal storytelling tool. Finally, the emotional power of truth reveal satisfaction lies in its timing and framing. Too early, and it diminishes suspense. Too late, and it risks frustration. A masterful reveal is both inevitable in hindsight and surprising in the moment. It rewards the audience for paying attention, makes the story feel coherent, and transforms previous uncertainty into a satisfying arc of understanding. In essence, the satisfaction comes not just from knowing the truth, but from experiencing the full emotional journey that leads to that revelation.